All right, so here we go. Thank you to the source of creation, the being of all, for being this healing session, for being literally everything. Thank you for the knowledge and the unfoldment of our comprehension and mastery over the mechanics of the gap, the mechanics of that level of creation where the full healing potential resides. Thank you for being that. Thank you for being driven or compelled to explore that level of self, because it is that exploration which is the foundation of all this energy healing. Thank you to the ancestors for being present, for loving, for supporting, for being divine being. Thank you to all of us, to the being in all of us, for blessing our work today with the ability to focus concisely, to get to the core of issues, to provide. From my side, I wish that I can provide the maximum possible value for everybody who's here today. Being providing through this instrument. Thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom for being the flow of knowingness, for blessing every corner of creation with the access or the bridge between infinity and manifested creation. All right. So for the new people, our oh, look at that. Excuse me, just closing that window for a second. Okay, recap of what is energy healing in a minute. Energy healing is the ability to focus attention concisely in order to activate the source energy of creation at that point. Because attention really is our purest, most accessible form of that. Source of creation has presented itself to the human experience as the tool of awareness, as the ability to focus attention. It is attention, pure awareness, pure consciousness. That's what it is. So we all have the ability to focus it. And that's the fundamental to energy healing, because as soon as the awareness goes onto something, it activates, it enlivens that source energy in that area and wakes it up and brings all the qualities of totality, wholeness. Health means wholeness, right? Balance. It brings that to that area. That's a nutshell. That's in the nutshell. That's in the nutshell. The intro to today's session involves a little more dynamic examination of the path, of the landscape, because we have the inner and outer flow of the divine dialogue. We've got the collapse of wholeness to a point of expression, and we've got the collapse of the manifest expression back into the state of wholeness. And at both ends, at both extreme ends of that system, infinity resides. Absolute, unmanifest, infinite field, infinite ocean of being resides at both ends. Bigger than the biggest, smaller than the smallest. Attention can move into the gap, into the area between manifest and unmanifest. And at that level, it interfaces with that system. So the system of collapsing into unmanifest being and reemerging into this state of manifestation. In that gap, what we do is significant, but it's simple also. It can be very simple, because awareness can act like a gate, or like when I say gate, I refer to logic gates in computer programming, which interface with the flow of electrical energy. So electrical energy flows but it flows into gates in a computer, in a computer circuit, in a electrical circuit. They're little gates, so the energy flows into the gate, and then the gate decides what it wants to do. Well, do I want to let this energy keep flowing forward, or do I want to stop it? Those are basically the two options. You can stop it or you can flow it. Or if no energy is flowing in, do I want to make a flow come out because nothing, then I do the opposite. So the gates have these abilities to do either the same or the opposite of what the energy is doing. And this is a very, very simple, it's very fundamental. It's either basically stopping or starting. And of course, stop and start is a reflection at a very tiny level in our awareness of what's happening at the cosmic level, which is the fundamental material creation is stopping, it's falling down into nothingness, or from nothingness, something is coming out. So that's also a kind of a stop and a start, right? So all we're doing is that stopping and starting energy is interacting with itself. So if I have something that's unpleasant or unnatural or imbalanced, then and it's flowing, then I can decide what kind of gate I want to put, what kind of stop I want to put at the gap between manifest and unmanifest. If anything that is uncomfortable, any kind of illness or imbalance or a challenge or something is present because something in the relative is breaking down, something is going away, something is destroying, is falling back into its unmanifest state. So I can decide what I'm going to do with that. Am I going to grab that thing and perpetuate it? Or am I going to allow it to dissolve to nothingness? There's so many ways of gently addressing at the very finest level of the flow of divinity. There's so many combinations. You can put combinations together of stopping and starting. And that's really how computers are built. I mean, for some of us, the computer technology is like some kind of crazy magic, some kind of crazy modern magic. I mean, how do you get from electrical energy flowing into a circuit to this? Like, this is huge. This is amazing what you can do with computers, right? Like 20 years ago, we'd hardly heard of them, and now, or 30 years ago or something, and now who can live without them? None of us can live without them, practically. So they build up, the stops and starts build up together in combinations, in various combinations to produce various effects. And it's very interesting that in computer programming, there's a basic unit for the programming languages, which has 64 points in it, 64 points. And it's interesting that when Nassim Haramein discovered the weight, he figured out the mathematics of how to measure the weight of a proton. He discovered a form, a universal form at that level of creation with 64 points. And 64 points is the number of points in the Flower of Life matrix, which in a particular lecture that I watched of Nassim Haramein right after he had made this great world discovery thing, fame and all that, he put up that picture of the Flower of Life matrix, and he said, this form with its 64 points is a basic fundamental building block of our reality. So we're just looking at the same thing from the level of consciousness. That's all. And consciousness is what created all that in the first place. So we're really functioning from the switchboard, from the point of control, you could say, from the control panel or from the control station. Everybody has the ability, everybody has the capability, the power in your hands right now. So I'm just going through the group right now, and we're kind of bringing together, gelling and integrating for the whole group based on the reality that you own right now, all the resources you need to do this energy healing work. Based on this simple premise of addressing the divine dialogue, addressing the inward and outward flow of creation from the perception of creating our own gates. how do we interact with that flow in order to support the most lovely, full expression of divinity in ourselves and in our lives. I'm going to go through some of my 10 favorite energy healing practices that you can use right now that are valuable and hopefully serving humanity for all times. And I kind of divided them up based on the flow analogy, I also have questions, and there's some really great questions that came in, and I need to address those too. So I think I'm going to go, maybe we'll go through some techniques, and then we'll look at some questions like that. Last night, I told everybody I'm dividing it into situations where we let our awareness just sit. So it's kind of like a low energy, it's kind of passive. It doesn't require a lot of effort on the side of the individual to do those particular technologies. And that's one. So just sit. There's another body of technologies that involve a flow, like more of an output or more of a engagement of awareness. So awareness moving, being, becoming. So that's another kind of technology where we've kind of got a movement of energy going and a consistent. So there can be a consistent sit, stability, or flow. And there's some technologies that incorporate both. And there's some technologies that incorporate neither. So four, like the four Vedas. All right, so let's look at number one. Number one, technologies that involve a simple, steady setting of awareness. The webinars are a little bit like this, right? Because I'm on an action mode, but you guys get the chance to kind of sit back and just be on the receiving mode. You're just receiving, so you're just sitting with it. And as we do healings throughout, it's a matter of just the simple awareness, being with the healing, basically just being with it. However, use of hand chakras is a really great technology, because when you use the hand chakra, all you do is you put the hand chakra wherever it needs to be, you know, here, 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 wherever it needs to be. And the first step with the hand chakra healing is just to sit. And often what I find is that is usually sufficient for all kinds of different concerns or I'm just feeling with everybody where the hand chakra needs to go in order to support maximum well-being for everyone. And to know that if you can't reach a spot, like say it's in the back, you can put hands in the front, or you can just energetically put the hand. And when you get used to energetically putting the hand chakra in various places, you can put multiple hands. So if you've got an extra sore spot in the back somewhere, or say your bank account, or anywhere, anywhere you want a little bit of support there, you can put multiple. You can put 50 or 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 or infinite hands. Because there's just a feel to the hand chakra energy. And everybody is getting that awakening right now in the hand chakras. So if you start feeling like your hand chakras are waking up, that's because in our group, we're putting our attention collectively on the hand chakras, right? As soon as the attention goes there, it opens it up and wakes it up. Some people I'm seeing hand chakras getting so wide open, they're like as big as heart chakras. Great, big, full, fluffy, lovely hand chakra energies going on there. Good job, everybody. Just a little bit of attention, right? That's all it is. It just sits there. And then you put the hand chakra wherever you want, and the energy of being goes into that area. Good. Also, reading the healings that I'm producing or watching the healing videos is another way of just simple sitting with the attention on that particular thing. So that's another way. If you notice when you're watching the video healings or when you're reading the reports that you notice a lot of movement of energy, that's the byproduct of the sitting. The sitting is fundamental. And then the movement is just being moving. And who sits? Being sits. Who moves? Being moves. So being is doing the whole thing. I told the story last night, but I share with the new people today, of a girlfriend who came to me for a healing because she'd had a alcoholic, abusive father who beat her and her sister with implements when she was a child. And after he died, she found the box with all the whips and sticks and belts and things like that. And she used writing. She took a Sharpie marker, and for her, she made it like a little bit of a ceremony with it. She went out under the full moon. She took the Sharpie marker and she wrote, "I love you," on those implements. And "you are precious to me. And I would never hurt you," and things like that on the implements. And then she kept them. And she said she found that that act was enough. Now they can just sit, right? She did the writing, and now she can just sit with it. And now she said that those implements are the representation of the healing between her and her father. I'm sure he was there. And I'm sure that his incredible love was with her at that time. And I'm sure that he will never do that again. So it was a great healing. It was a big upliftment for her family, for herself, or even for her sister, for everyone. So you can make your own writing. You don't have to depend on Dorothy's writing. You can make your own stuff because you're smart. Okay. So now we've done an activation for the hand chakras. We've talked about reading and watching as kind of passive ways of just sitting with something. There's another thing. I didn't mention this yesterday, but I think this is a really important technology for energy healing that everybody should have, and that is the attainment of knowledge. Because the attainment of knowledge means sitting. It means really just sitting in a kind of a quiet, receptive mode with whatever that knowledge is. And there are, if you let awareness settle down to the gap between manifest and unmanifest levels of creation, there are, especially in the causal level of creation, such archives of knowledge, such amazing, like you could say the Akashic record divides and subdivides and subdivides and subdivides into layers upon layers of different categories of forms of knowledge. And if you need information, you can always sit with that area, whatever it is that you're interested in, whatever it is you need to know at any given moment. And particularly for those people in the audience today who are suffering with an illness or something that's really uncomfortable for them, I suggest start with the symptom and sit. The symptom has cords or connections, threads of consciousness that connect it to its source, its seed, whatever caused it to arise in the body in the first place. So you sit with it. First, you sit with the symptom, because we can always find a symptom. That's easy enough. Sit with the symptom. And almost always underneath that symptom, you'll feel some discordant feeling of some kind. There's some grief or sadness or sorrow or anger or fear or something. And you can follow if you just sit. You don't try to do, you just sit with it. You sit with the feeling and under the feeling, and this is actually answering one of the questions, because we have a lady in Croatia who's got some fear in the central nervous system. Usually behind discordant feelings are beliefs. In this case, I'm seeing beliefs. So, and the reason that beliefs can be kind of a problem and they can cause so much trouble in the system is because they often sit at a very, very deep level. Like I'm seeing these beliefs often sit in the filtration area of the being. So you've got the physical body up here where we experience this moment right now, and then there's all this fine material down lower, which is trying to filter out infinity. Infinity at the source of being has to filter through all these layers of consciousness in order to get up to the present, this moment right now, isolated in space-time. So in that filtration area, that's where a lot of beliefs sit. And they're part of the filtration system. So they become enmeshed in the field of consciousness itself. As such, we don't tend to recognize or identify them concisely. So it's like, it feels like something's just happening to me. I don't know why. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't know what the beliefs are. I don't know how to find the beliefs, like that. It's like the system gets sort of carries on at the gross material level of like, you know, how do I get down to the finer level? The thing is, the gross material being can integrate into the gross material level. But the gross material level of being, of self, of physiology, its nature is to be locked into space-time. So the part of self that's going to find those beliefs isn't necessarily the physical material, unless there's a really open flow of communication between body and being. Then sometimes your body can talk to you. It can do certain things for you. Like sometimes bodies can produce impressions like, I was just thinking of, sometimes you can have like smells, you'll smell something and then the smell will tick off an awareness, oh, I needed to, you know, turn off my oven or something. Anyway, sorry, but no, sometimes you can have other kinds of, I'm talking more about like, that are sometimes called like hallucinations, sort of. Like you have a visual impression, like this morning I was having over and over this deep, deep impression of being out on a battlefield after the battle and going through body by body, looking for someone and finding someone who is still alive. And like, how am I going to get this person back to a safe space? And how am I going to get them healed up so that they can live their life because they actually weren't supposed to die? And I mean, you know, it was just one of those things. It came first and then it came again and again and again. And after a while, it was like, I just have to surrender to this because this is what's happening. Anyway, so sometimes it doesn't matter which channel of awareness it comes in, whether it's a sense of smell or sense of sight or whatever. Okay, getting back. Going into the central nervous system. Beautiful, beautiful. Did everybody see that lovely chat from Las Vegas? Yeah, Las Vegas. Yeah, she's saying her heart and shoulders are going through a transformation. It feels like it's related to a relationship with Father, who also hit me hard. And could we please do healing for children who get punished harshly when they're little? That is beautiful. Absolutely. And what we can do is very simple. We can go back out under the moon with my friend. And we can sit at that moment, because she was performing a kind of a yagya or a ceremony for her relationship with her father. And it enhances her work and it enhances the effect for everyone to go back out under the moonlight with those, and the things that he hit her with are representative of the feelings, the harsh feelings that were in the father's heart at the time. That not caring and lack of compassion and empathy. It doesn't matter if it's an actual weapon or if it's the hand or even if it's just words. It's what's happening on the level of consciousness that's significant. It's that sense of someone being big and stronger and authoritative, and the little one being vulnerable and weak and unable to defend themselves, having no choice but just to accept, just to go through the pain of it. I'm seeing lots and lots of threads, lots and lots of threads. And in many, many cases, most cases, I'd say alcohol is directly involved. So alcohol is an intelligence in its own right. and it takes over the individual as a host, as a parasite takes over a host. And then who is actually hitting? It's really being in the form of the alcohol entity, or being in the form of a structure associated with a, and again, with the alcohol, what's happening is there's some stops and some opens that are happening in the gap that allow that particular kind of entity or that particular kind of being to manifest forth. Or I would say allow divinity to form in that particular shape. It's a very malefic shape, malevolent shape, very, very dark thing. And we've done some, thank you for bringing this up, because we've done some healings for alcoholism and alcohol use in our webinars in the past, but it's such a huge issue, and it has brought grief to mankind for tens of thousands of years. So we're just going to go in and touch on that. I'm looking at the entity and I'm seeing that it has both positive and negatives, right? Like I'm like, oh, it's all malevolent and it's all bad. No, I mean, you know, for years it was also medicine, right? Before we had anesthetics. Thank you. Anyway, spirits, alcohol, right? Exactly. That's why they call it spirits. You got it. You guys are smart. You guys are smart. I'm just feeling the energy moving, and it feels like there's just a lot of grief and a lot of remorse, layers and layers and layers of remorse. It feels like this healing is going out, not just in our world at this time, but it's going back through time as well, because a lot of people have alcohol problems in the family lines as well. And so it's just moving through the family, mostly through the family lines. It looks like it's working historically for us here. And I'm just feeling the energy moving as we come up to the next section, which is flow, right? So the flow is happening. So what are we doing with our gate? Our gate is like, yeah, let it flow, man. Just, it's coming in and it's moving straight through. We're just, if it comes, it also goes. And the flow is the interface between the malevolent energies associated with the problem of abuse and abuse of children, with the heavenly divine energies, which are associated with the solution to the problem, which is permanent evolution for all those individuals involved. Permanent evolution, permanent evolution, permanent evolution, permanent growth. I'm seeing brain restructuring. For people, a lot of people have habits. They have certain channels organized in the brain that support behaving in that particular way, or having a relationship. It's like having a relationship with a person or a pet or something. It's like there's a relationship there. There's a home. There's a home for the relationship with alcohol. So that home, I'm just asking, being, if it's possible, that great palace that millions and millions of people have occupied that home, that. And I'm just, when I say that, the awareness goes back and it goes back and it goes back to that spot. It's just flowing. We're just letting the flow happen so that wholeness goes into that great palace, that great stronghold. It's a great stronghold. The stronghold has a heart. It's got a sacred inner chamber. That's what it's got. Seeing it, man. Seeing it. There's a sacred inner chamber. This has to do with many, many dimensions, multiple universes. It works through our universe, not just on Earth. It's big. It's big, but I'm seeing it in context. Thank you to everyone, by the way, for receiving this shielding that everybody got yesterday, but everybody also today gets. The shielding lets us go into places like this safely. Good job, everyone. As a collective, as a holy collective. And what's happening is setting up a silent thread of offering to the Mother of Creation. That's what's happening in that sacred space, in that heart of that place, is setting up a spot of holy purity. Sacred, like a Brahmastan, like a sacred silence is there, and it is the love of the Mother of Creation right there. And it's purity, and it's truth, and it's revealing truth. And what's happening is, it's like planting a seed. We planted a seed in the middle of that spot. Our amazing, powerful, incredible collective did this thing. And as it did that, it's surrounding with light of life, prana, consciousness, feeding it, supporting the awakening of light in a place, let me tell you, that was very dark. So it's like a spot of light, and it's growing, and it's growing. And so there are resources to promote growth, right? There are gates. We have gates that support growth. So the gates, there are some gates that if there's no energy coming in, the gate does the opposite, and it makes the energy flow. And there are other gates that if the energy is coming in, it supports and says, yes, keep going. Keep the energy flow. So those are working together in forms, in 64 forms and combinations, right? On that little spot to create like a kind of a fertile ground around that spot of light as it grows, so that as it expands, it's moving ever into a space which nourishes it. And that's happening, and that's happening, and I'm just watching it, I'm just watching it, I'm just watching it. I'm feeling it's very interesting. It is definitely causing some shifts in the heart chakras of a lot of people. And part of it is a lot of fear is releasing from the system. So this gets back to Our Lady in Croatia. There's this nervous system that has the fear. Because the premise is, if I feel like this is hard to deal with, this is alcohol, okay? The premise is, if I feel like I'm facing something that's difficult to deal with, then it's easier to run away. It's easier to just go hang out in the fun zone. In the short term, maybe. In the long term, definitely not. Because in the long term, whatever we don't deal with now will continue to fester. And we'll just have to deal with it later. We'll be forced at some point or another to face it. So may as well reorganize the brain physiologies, and this is what's happening for the ancestors through the long period, so that the dopaminergic pathways, this is also for Our Lady with the nervous system, the dopaminergic pathways respond, they trigger, they wake up when we go to the thing that we're afraid of dealing with and deal with it. So when one is able to say, oh, I've got a challenge or a problem, or this seems impossible, it's down at some subtle level of myself, and it's so deep that my intellect doesn't know how to deal with it, and my conscious mind doesn't know how to deal with it, and I can't even get at it except at some kind of deep abstract level of self. Fine. You own your abstract. Even in a conscious wave of intention, abstract being is also there. So awareness goes into whatever it is that's difficult to unpack. And it can unpack it. It just restructures it. We digressed a little. I just want to make sure that the children are fine. The children who had been abused are responsible for that healing that came up, and it is now running on automatic, basically. And as that light expands, lots of amazing, beautiful expressions of creativity and intelligence and support for life and supportive expression for everyone on earth continue to grow with that. I'm seeing performances, ceremony surrounding that light now. It's like the fire at the center of the ceremony, right? Becomes that. And the ceremonies continue. As for Our Lady in Croatia, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for the question. What a great question. So awesome. We've cleared fear now, many layers of ancestors, and you should know that I was thinking about you this morning, and I was wondering if there was a connection between that battlefield and your situation. The only connection is a little bit abstract in that there are karmas associated with past incarnations of being in war conditions and war situations. Also, not this lifetime, but previous lifetimes, alcohol. So that's where the karma comes. The karma comes from there. So yesterday we did a lot of clearing of. Right. Thank you. Thank you, yes, thank you from Ogden. Thank you, my dear. You are so freaking brilliant. Yeah, not only did everybody see that chat, he's saying not necessarily battles in the past, but also could be battles in the future. And that's absolutely true. And that brings me to a point that came up in several questions having to do with working within the context of subtle realms of creation where things are happening in other places, and somehow there's a part of the self that's involved with that. So we do need to deal with that. But just to complete with Croatia, I just want to say that yesterday's session, we talked about dissolving bridges as one of the 10 top techniques for energy healing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you go back and look at that video. So, no worries. No worries. No worries. There's a lot happening at once. Okay. We're going to go to the next flow techniques. Flow techniques. So flow techniques involve awareness moving. Awareness moving. One of those techniques is light medicine. So when we produce light medicines, there's the experience of silently, there's kind of a neither in there because we just fall back into the field of being. Sitting in the field of silence. There's still a flow there because when making light medicines, what's happening is the intention goes into the field of silence with that idea, the intention is there of I'm going to produce the antidote to this problem, whatever it is. So even the falling into silence has an element of flow to it. Intention is a kind of a flow. It has a directive. It's a directive. So it goes in, and the energy that's the antidote starts to rise up into the field, the energy field of the being, and then it gets directed to the area that needs it. You can use your hands if you want to focus it more concisely, but you don't have to. You can just let it flow where it needs to go. There are so many formulas for light medicines. Last night, some of the people who were here were talking about organite. And the thing is, organite first started as a concept on the level of consciousness. It started as a light medicine. And then people figured out, who was it? Was it Wilhelm Reich or somebody? I can't remember who first created organite. It might have been Wilhelm Reich. Anyway, you guys don't. You know about science. This is more metaphysical stuff over here, but I think it may have been. I'll have to check on that. Anyway, how to harness it, how to capture it, little pieces of metal, because metal conducts energy. So then made a material substance that we can hold in the hand. Oh, here's an interesting question. Yeah, as long as we're talking about light medicines. Her question is light medicine just another way of explaining the algorithm you talked with us about earlier? Essentially, the algorithm becomes part of that process. But light medicine is a slightly more elaborated form because in the algorithm, you have the problem, you fall into the field of being, and then the antidote comes out and there's a kind of interaction. But with light medicines can actually be directed into things. You know, that solution that comes out, basically, I guess when we talk about light medicines, we're talking about sending that solution up to the denser levels of the physiology. You know, using the hand chakra to direct it, for example. The other thing about light medicines in that they are, as I was mentioning before, there are a lot of formulas for light medicines. And the thing about light medicine formulas, it's a little different from the algorithm. There's an innocence in the algorithm, right? I've got the problem. I'm going to let being take care of it. Being takes care of it. Being comes up with a solution. Sometimes the solution is a light medicine. Sometimes it's an actual energy frequency that has to go to a specific part of the body and like affect it. But sometimes the solution is different. Sometimes the solution could be, it could come through in a form that speaks to whatever that particular problem is. When we're looking at things that are very abstract level of creation, sometimes it's a little hard to discriminate. Well, is that a light medicine, or is that some kind of other sort of formula, or is it a being? You know, is it a thing, or is it alive? You know, sometimes it's like being in the ocean. Is that a plant, or is that an animal there? You know, kind of looks like half of each, you know. So sometimes it comes out like that. The important thing is enough comes out that the solution can be applied to the problem and produce an effect that heals the being. That's the most important thing. So yeah, thank you for that question about light medicines. There's definitely an overlap at the fine level of creation. So yeah, you know, it's nice that your brain's making the connections. That's the important thing. New neural connections, very useful for energy healing. New neural connections across the board for everyone. We're looking at the way in which information presents itself based on your filters at the finest level of the manifested form for everybody, because what we want here looks like a matrix, a truth matrix, which has the ability to overlay orderliness into that subtle level of creation, the abstract level of creation, so that when the solutions come out of the field of being, it's easier to discriminate precisely what we're dealing with. And when you can discriminate what you're dealing with, then you know what kind of gate to put right there. Because with a matrix, usually matrices have a fractal form. So you've got big ones with littler ones inside them like that. They all look the same and similar. So the matrix itself at some point is the same form as the gate. And if you've got the gate matching precisely to the matrix, then you've got your own system set up in such a way as to receive the value of the matrix at maximum capacity. Yes? Good. All right. Flow techniques. So light medicine, the digestive mastery is a flow technique because you're flowing love to your gut bacteria, and the gut bacteria is flowing love back, and there's a lot of back and forth with that one. Cutting cords is another one. We don't just set the awareness there, we actually flow the awareness along the spine to see if there are any places where connections are coming in. We did a big healing with that yesterday, did a big clearing of energy loss for everybody, and at that time, everybody received a kind of a mandala shape. I just saw it underneath the physiologies, kind of at the foundation of everyone's body, this kind of very orderly, sacred geometrical form of light that's like a kind of a shield that supports your energy field, particularly, specifically, the energies produced by your being as a result of your spiritual devotion, your acts of goodness, your virtues. Whenever we're sweet and good and loving and empathetic and kind and devoted and reverent, whenever these feelings come up, a kind of energy is produced in the physiology, which is extremely precious. It's extremely valuable. And this shield protects that energy for you so that you can fold it back into your own nature, give it back to your own divine being through your own channel of self in order to support the building up of a level of inner power. We call that inner power. What's interesting about this matrix, this is so interesting. Last night, one of the ladies who was here said that by strange and amazing coincidence, she had just received that shield from another energy healer, her daughter, earlier that day. And I was like, well, I've never seen this shield ever. And then I realized several things, all of a sudden, click, 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 was happening. First of all, I realized our healing collective, we all bring different things to the circle, right? So whatever the blessings are, everybody brings, we share. So she had just received this shield earlier in the day. So she brought that to the healing circle. And then it became relevant at that particular point in the webinar to bring it up and everybody to receive. So that was really cool. And that was really good. And she got deeper in understanding on it because I was coming at it from a different angle than the angle her daughter was coming. So I was able to give some filling in details that she didn't get in her previous healing. So then I was thinking about that overnight. And one of the thoughts was maybe the shield was actually kind of coming in as a cosmic download that her daughter being sensitive picked up, and I being sensitive picked up, and others of us in the circle being sensitive picked up, all of you deserving picked up. In a sense, it kind of doesn't matter. It's being, finding, just like that little seed that we just planted in that big dark castle of alcoholism, that you plant the seed, and if the circumstances around the seed are sufficiently or organized, that spot of light will grow. And I think that's what happened with this woman and her daughter. So her daughter's a lovely energy healer and had given her the shield. And because of the ripeness of the ground, the fertileness of the ground where it grew. And then it went to our community, our healing circle. And then from our healing circle, it goes out to the larger healing circle because we're also providing fertile ground. It's interesting. It was such a mind blow, though. Like in the middle of the webinar, she's over there talking to her friend, you know, and she's like, she saw the same thing. So it's very cool. I love that. It's very validating when that happens. All right. So flow, those are technologies for flow. Look, all of these technologies are also free on my website. So if I went through something too fast, you're like, what did she say? Go to free offerings on the website and you'll find it. Again, written out slowly or whatever, whatever works best. Another question coming in here. Oh, hello, you're with me. Hello. Did you like my explanation about the shield? Anyway, so the same lady with the shield is saying, collective ancestry of alcoholism and abuse erase? Yes. The thing is, yay. I love you guys. Okay, so it's being erased from the inside out. It's massive. It's massive. We did something that's going to make a systemic change. For each individual, could be a little different, especially now. Different people will take different amounts of time. For some families, the abuse goes back so many generations, and each, you know, working collectives, we're working collectives, right? So, so anyway, I hope that's the answer to the question. Her question is, if we've fully erased, oh, honey, I love you too. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, so it'll just keep going in layers upon layers upon layers until it's all erased. We don't know how long, but everything we do supports that process. So we just keep doing it, man. All right, so the next thing is, I have this very sweet question with a pretty please at the end. Could we please practice the healing algorithm? So because this webinar is really about giving you the practical information of how to do energy healing, I want you to go away feeling like, okay, there's something I can actually do here. So Let's go ahead and run through that algorithm once, at least. Oh, God bless. We've got someone here who says he just celebrated 19 years of sobriety. Strong man. All right. Love it. Okay, so energy healing algorithm. Step 1. Notice where there's an imbalance. Notice where there's a little problem. Anywhere in the system, anything you want. Can be relationships, can be manifestation, can be physical. With the awareness on the problem, it's easier if you close the eyes, because when we close the eyes, awareness settles down. We let that perception of the imbalance dissolve into the field of being, into the source of creation. There's a tenderness to that process. It's so, source of creation is so intimate, right? From the source of creation, reply returns. The reply will be one of two. Either greater details and greater in-depth understanding about the nature of the imbalance, like perhaps the seed of it, or expansion of broadened comprehension of what's really behind that imbalance. Or the other thing that can come up is the opposite of the imbalance, a solution. Whatever comes, we offer it back to the source of creation again with reverence, with gratitude. And what returns, being provides a flow of knowingness, which is received through the crown of the head, and it activates the Ajna chakra. The Ajna chakra brings up perceptions, sensory, sometimes very, very subtle sensory experiences, which lighten up or activate the understanding of the solution to that problem. Now we've got a problem, we've got a solution. We marry those and offer them back into the field of being again. This is where awareness gets to just enjoy the ride. What happens is, what comes from being at this point is an interface or an interaction between the area that's imbalanced and its solution. And these two come together and create wholeness. Totality emerges. Totality is your reality. It is what you really actually are. It is your truth. You are totality. Now, when I'm doing it over here with my own stuff that I've got, the teenagers having a conversation. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, thank you. God, I was just thinking of you too. So Michael says, pure consciousness is the ultimate intimacy and equality. God, I love you, Michael. Yes. And it was interesting when I was saying that, I was thinking of you, and then you talked. So validation. But yeah, I was thinking, when I was doing it right now, I was thinking every time I'm diving into the field of being, I'm just feeling this just so sweet, so intimate, so tender and personal and loving and rich and delicate and luscious. So sweet, so sweet. So for me, that's what's coming back. And I know that when we're doing this together as a collective, we each have like pieces of a puzzle. So the healings that we're doing for ourselves with this algorithm, oh, by the way, keep offering it. Whatever comes back, whatever you experience, doesn't matter what, offer back to the field of silence again. And what'll happen is the offering will get faster and faster and faster. It comes in, it goes back. It comes in, it goes back. Until it spins out to infinity. We each have pieces of a puzzle because we each have different problems that we're dealing with, right? Together, our collective practice gives rise to a healing that's multifaceted. It gives rise to a healing that speaks to the mother creation at a level of sophistication that she's like, wow, those guys are kind of smart down there. Or, wow, I'm kind of smart through them, aren't I? I'm kind of smart as that little healing collective there. So, because it's a form of speech, essentially. It's like the programming language being built up out of 64 different combinations of effects from the different gates and all that, the logic gates. So it's like that. It's a very, very beautiful, sophisticated, holistic expression of healing. And it has infinity at every single point in our healing circle. It's like really cool. That's something that like no one of us could create on our own. And Mother Creation loves it. She loves it. It's like, oh, they're finally doing something really cool now, you know, or I'm finally doing something really cool. Oh. So I'm just feeling that energy kind of rippling. It's just rippling through the source of creation, rippling through the field of being. It's rippling. It's rippling. And it's like, God, it's like she's laughing. I feel as if we're hearing the laughter of the Mother of the Universe energetically. And that laughter, it not only resonates in the nervous system. Oh, well, lots of comments coming in. It not only resonates in the nervous system, but it heals the nervous system as well. It is itself. It activates the dopaminergic flow in the nervous system. It does this. It awakens new ways of flowing dopamine in the body. It brings a fertile ground around the receptors, the dopaminergic receptors in the nervous system and the pleasure center in the nervous system so that it starts being fed. I don't know how long she's going to be laughing, but that could be a while because she's big. So healing flow. So this is another comment coming in here to all panelists. Using a deep reference and the hand chakra, humble ourselves to allow healing around points of resistance with hands facing downward, scoop upward with the hands up to 60% angle, 60 degree, oh, how much is that? To the floor, like that, I guess. Oh, I see, like that. Into reverent, humble, healing flow, lowering ourself to the resistance, and then flow bliss, making a charming reward that teaches the resistance to allow the humbling and dissolving of the problem. Mari, she taught me this. Keep hands pointed down. Oh, so, okay. Keep hands pointed down. Okay, so let's try this again. This is so cool. Thank you. Just point forward. Oh, it's a scoop. It's like hands like this. I see. Oh, I feel it. Oh, I feel it. When I do that, I feel like my hands are full. Can everybody feel that? You go like this. It's like you're scooping and your hands are full. That's interesting. I can feel the energy difference. That's very cool. Flow of bliss, making a charming reward that teaches the resistance to allow humility and dissolve the problem. Wow, thank you for teaching us that. That's so beautiful. How dear of you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Beautiful. All right. So that would be a kind of a flow technique, right? Because it's like energy flowing, even hands flowing. Hands flowing. Beautiful. All right. Allowing the chakras to point forward. I'll have to come and teach you better. Okay. You'll have to come and teach me better. But I did feel It's interesting to do that because you can feel fullness in your hands too. All right. Okay, so other techniques. Okay, and questions too. And I'm looking at our time because I want to make sure. I feel as though people's questions should be like the primary thing. I want to satisfy everybody's satisfied, and also the 10 other techniques that I do. 10. Yesterday we talked about the nuclear warhead mantra. This is in techniques that include both sitting quietly with energy and allowing energy to flow. Both. And so the sleep activation is a really good example of that, and the wealth activation and the healing algorithm is a good example of that too, because there's a diving in and coming out, but there's that point at the end where you just let the healing algorithm do what it does, and you just sit and watch in silence. You witness the experience. Self-love technique. I didn't talk about that at all yesterday. That's, again, eyes closed if it's easy for you. And if you want to put hands over heart, that can be helpful. For some people, they find it helpful, not necessarily to do, especially if you're doing it like sitting at a stoplight or standing in the checkout line. You don't have to be too conspicuous, but there's a space that is unique to one's own self. It is the pure channel of manifestation of divinity as you, as oneself. And that's the space that we find in awareness with this. We sit, and then sitting is like an honoring, right? It's finding that, it's creating that Brahmastan, that sacred silence in the middle of that space of self. And then imagine holding yourself in a completely accepting embrace of love. You are the one who hugs and the one who is being hugged. Nobody's love is more beautiful. Nobody's love is more precious because nobody knows you better. It means a lot to be loved by someone who really knows you. All the good stuff and all the less good stuff. All the heavenly stuff and all the earthy stuff. And then it holds. We just hold that embrace. And that embrace floods the body with so much bliss. Again, this exercise activates the flow of dopamine in the body. Also, other endorphins and hormones like oxytocin, serotonin. It's just so nourishing to hold yourself in a loving embrace. So nourishing. All right, we can open our eyes. Even after doing this exercise, the holding is still there. All the neurochemistry that you just produced with the exercise is being nourished. It's nourishing the body. The body's being nourished by it. It's lovely. It's very sweet. Get myself back to the middle here. Okay. All right. So self-love exercise, the sleep activation, which I think I talked about in detail yesterday. Wealth activation. This is a really interesting one. I haven't talked about it in ages. So I think we'll take a minute with it. And this is a both technique. At the beginning of creation, the Creator infused every particle with grace. So we're essentially living and expressions of a great ocean of God's grace, of being. This technique starts with just feeling it. Feeling floating in a golden ocean of grace, and every particle of creation inside you and outside you. It's grace and grace and grace and grace. And it's so full, a single drop of grace has enough fullness in it to take care of you for your whole life. It has so much resource in it that a single drop is enough to bless the body and to bless the being forever and ever. And you're in an ocean. You're in an ocean. So this is the sitting part. Just enjoying this luscious, yummy feeling, being in the ocean of grace. The flow part is when we allow ourselves to be receptive to it. And we allow that grace to be recognized within and without. So it's inside and it's outside, and it's inside and it's outside. It's all through and through you. And it washes, it has a cleansing or purifying effect on the being, and it particularly has a cleansing effect on fear and any sense of lack and not enough. Any feeling of I don't have enough resource and I don't have what I need to deal with this situation, and I'm afraid that I'm going to fail, and like that. All those energies wash away with this exercise. And that goldeny light of grace, it is pure wealth. It is like the seed of wealth. It's the manifestation of wealth, essentially. It's the love of God manifested as grace. It's the being valuing its own creation. There's no end to the range of your resource. There is no end. There is no end. All right. Flow. Flow. We become exponents of grace, right? We become radiant beacons of grace. Oh, beautiful. Thank you for this point about love. Yeah, and that's also related to wealth too, because love is the commodity of the universe. And there's a comment that for those who are here, because you guys can't read this. Marishi, everybody else can read the chats that come up. Marishi said that love is the finest form of gravity. I remember when he said that. I mean, I wasn't at the actual lecture, but I remember seeing a videotape of it. He talked about how all the planets and the stars, they stay close to each other through gravity, but really love. It's very beautiful. And love is the commodity of the universe, and everything in creation values your love. Fullness of heart. So beautiful. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. She's saying, I'm going to read the chats to these guys here too. So she's saying that wealth meaning abundance of or fullness of heart. Beautiful. All right. So that's a wealth activation. Then there are techniques that are neither. So I was thinking about this a lot last night, because I logically, if there's a flow where we just sit, and if there are techniques where we just sit with awareness just sets on something, and there are techniques where awareness moves and being is becoming, and there are techniques where there's both sitting and moving, then logically there has to be a category that's neither. So I made a neither category, not being really sure what was going to go in there. And when I thought about it overnight, what I came up with was, I've got a long list of techniques that we could think of in the terms of neither techniques. But when I really thought about it carefully, what I realized is it's kind of a matter of perspective. Or I would say having to do with, well, let's use the word perspective. I was going to say levels of consciousness, but I think it's safer and sort of more comfortable for people if we use the word perspective. That at a certain level of, or a certain perspective, there's a kind of enough separation, because we're working with the relative field, because the symptoms are here at the surface, right? So we're dealing with manifest and unmanifest. And so there's a kind of a separation between those two values. But there is a perspective where there is no separation. And from that perspective, the work that occurs is, I would say, in the neither category, right? Because all it is just being, just being. So I think that's the best way to describe that. We're just a minute out, and I'm not giving you any techniques in that area. But I did mention a few yesterday. Balance, I think, was the one. Because from a state, when there's a lot going on, and it's chaotic, and it's like, and then awareness comes to balance. From balance, from that point, consciousness can expand to embrace everything. And when consciousness expands and embraces everything, it's not even like sitting or flowing. It's just completely just being. And at that point, all the solutions unfurl very, very effortlessly, very effortlessly. Your desires are fulfilled even before you realize you have them. So a couple questions came in. There was a question, oh gosh, I got to go back to my question panel here, my question box. Oh, I've got someone with no sound. Oh, my love. Hey, Tom, we've got someone with no sound in there. Are you monitoring questions? Bless you for being with me. Yeah, there's a question about that balance point. Okay, thank you. Thank you for those for letting me know you can hear me. There was a question about the balance point, and a question about balance came in last night too. And the question was, what energy healing can we do to establish absolute firm balance so that all problems and challenges are being met from that neither position, from that position of being so vast and so big in one's own perspective of witnessing the problem that it solves itself before you even realize it's a problem. So, and that is definitely an option. And I think that may be why I was going through the battlefield this morning, because that was a problem being solved before I even realized that problem was there. It'll crop up later. I'll be going, oh, that's why I was in that battlefield. And so that also brings me to this question that came in about, I think it was a question about balance here too. Yes. No, wait. Hang on. Come here. It must have come in the other. Darn it. Anyway, it had to do with balance between the hellish and darker, maybe that is in my question box, the hellish and darker realms of creation and the, yes, here it is. Given that we need to balance any point, what does it feel like to be balanced regardless of the mix of hellish versus heavenly, hot versus cold, etc.? What does it feel like? What does it feel like? I think in order for your question to be answered, it's necessary for you to feel that. So what we need to do is everybody receive a download right now for that feeling. That completely, wholly, stable point of balance, of being absolute supersymmetry. Everything's symmetrical. That everybody can just receive that as the gift from being, what that feels like, regardless of the mix. Regardless of the mix. And depending on what you're creating and what you need, you're going to place different gates, right? In the gap. But the balance underlies all of it. And then I didn't get to do 2 questions from Scotland, and I'm bummed because last time these questions were so amazing, but I want to address one of them just briefly, where I know we're over time, but I'm going to quick because this also ties into some folks on the West Coast, and this has to do with dealing with entities. Oh, beautiful. Oh, beautiful. So we've got a lady saying, she agrees 100% on what I said about balance. For her, it feels like divinity, the divine dialogue, right? The 2 strokes. It's like love. They're talking to each other. Stable, beautiful. entities and dealing with, and this also a little bit ties into the last question about heavenly versus hellish, because there we're talking about realms of creation, alternate realities, and that's a whole area. And I think the main principle here is, this lady's question is, she felt a little vulnerable towards some energy that seemed disembodied energy that came to her and was invasive and made her very uncomfortable. And she'd seen a movie about it when she was a young girl, and it freaked her out, you know, and then she kind of had the experience of it. The important thing is, Mother of Creation is experiencing everything all the time. Everything, all the time, all the time. So if you wanted to know everything that was horrible, that was going on all the time, you couldn't know everything because it's too much. And if you want to know everything that's wonderful that's going on all the time, you can't know it all because it's too much. But if the intention is to know what you need to know in order to make your next step forward, then that's what comes. And in this particular situation of this lady's experience, it happened in the gap between dream and sleep, and or when she was, I think, resting. Yeah, at night. And so in that state, the body purifies. And it's my experience that the purification was so intense. It was so deep. It was a deep, deep, deep purification that it was actually manifested as this experience. But it was actually a purification that was taking place at that time. And it's interesting that at the end, she said, then she asked Mother Divine for proof that this was another following experience. She asked for proof of the existence of Mother Divine. And then she realized that calling on divine power helped her in the middle of this reality that was a very uncomfortable experience. And so now she realizes that no energy and no entity can ever stand in the face of the power of the source of creation. That's right. And also you should know, everybody should know too, that entities that don't have physical form are not as manifest as we are. So we're always going to be bigger. You're always going to be bigger because we manifest all the way to the physical, and everything manifests from being, right? So some beings manifest this much, and some beings manifest this much, and some beings manifest this much, but we manifest big. So if a being that only manifests this much is giving you trouble, that thing, it doesn't have the range that you have. It doesn't have the range. And what it's doing is it's just aggravating. This is revisiting her experience, is aggravating this area down here in order to purify something up in the physical material level of self. Okay, I got to as many questions as I could. I will revisit any that I missed today. I love you all. Thank you for being with me, and please forgive me for taking everybody over time. I'm sorry. I will now end the meeting for everyone. It was absolutely wonderful to have so many people on the webinar today. All my love out to everybody who is here today. God bless you, and I will see you again soon.